My name's Gary Dimmock, and I'm a newspaper reporter. And back in the 90s, I came across a story about Bobby Mailman and Walter Gillespie. Bobby and Wally spent a long time in Dorchester Penitentiary for something that they didn't do. It looks like an old workhouse from the 1800s, and it rises up on a hill. There's a graveyard, an actual graveyard for the lifers that didn't make it out alive. Thank God Bobby and Wally made it out alive. And that's a tall order to try to prove your innocence. It's probably the tallest order to try to prove your innocence from behind bars where you have no access to the internet, where every call is collect. So you're calling in favors. And, after so many years, they got a lot of favors, and you gotta commend their perseverance, their determination, and their courage. All things that Jerome Kennedy said. He was the lead lawyer on it for Innocence Canada, former Justice Minister. He called me up after reading a lot of stories that I did back in the day, and he put together a bulletproof, successful application that led to their ultimate full acquittal exoneration in the highest court in New Brunswick under Chief Justice Tracy Dewar. And for them, life in prison, Bobby went in, and he rebelled against the system and became a prison leader. And, that earned him a reputation, made his path pretty more secure because he was a tough guy from the street, and he worked out. And after his son died, his first son died when he was in prison, he changed his ways. He spent, I think it was like 8 months in solitary confinement, and he came out and he just changed his whole lifestyle. He quit booze and drugs. And Wally was less involved in prison leadership. He was more the quiet guy, the guy that he was really good at running the poker games in the prison. And so his cut on every game in the prison, all the money that they made on the prison poker games went to prove their innocence, to pay for private investigators and expenses and whatnot, like the late Ken Fitch, who was an RCMP investigator who quit um, and became a private investigator, helped big time. Can't say enough about Innocence Canada. They were brilliant. This would be the 79th wrongful conviction just that we know about in Canada. And so clearly the system has failed too many people. And in this case, the system failed them. The police failed them, and the prosecutors who adopted the police case failed them as well. You're talking about witnesses that were paid to lie about two men at a murder trial. This is not supposed to happen, but it did. First time I met Bobby and Wally would have been Dorchester Penitentiary. I want to say 97, after a year of talking on the phone with mostly Bobby, always Bobby. Bobby was the leader, and he wouldn't stop talking about the case. And I just got hooked on it. And I remember the very first time meeting him, I thought, like Big Bobby Mailman had a big reputation in St. John as like one of the most feared men, right? A mailman, Bobby Mailman. But when he walked into the room, uh, he was he was not he was short, and he was prison pale, and he was anything but aggressive, and he was walking like just like kind of gently, like you didn't want to wake a little kid or something like that. And I'll never forget, he said, my reputation is bigger than the truth, or something like that. Anyway, but yeah, he was certainly not the big, bear on the street. Wally, way more quiet, loner, greaser guy, old timer, running poker games in prison to come up with a little bit of money to pay for the people to look into their case. Anyway, sadly, Wally died. But thankfully, he died after. But he, after he was exonerated, he didn't live as a free man for long, and he unfortunately died before he was compensated. And Bob got terminally ill cancer. So, it's kind of late for the guys, in my opinion. The murder was in 1983. The trials were in 1984. And they went to prison in 1984. When I first met them, there was not a lot of humor in the room. Uh, I was there with Bobby and Wally. There was a lawyer in there before, and pretty gloom and doom conversations, right? It's not exactly going to the park, and but the last time that I saw them in prison, uh, we did have a big laugh because it was Thanksgiving, and I think it was 2000. And I went over to Nova Scotia. Amherst has the closest Kentucky Fried Chicken to Dorchester Prison Penitentiary. And so I went over and got them Kentucky Fried Chicken for Thanksgiving. Never thought that I would get it inside the prison. But the guy at the bubble, the security bubble, he said, "You got to be kidding me." And he was an older guy. And I said, "No." And he goes, "Who's it for?" And I said, "Bobby and Wally." He said, "If it was for any other inmates other than Bobby and Wally, there'd be no damn way that somebody be bringing Kentucky Fried Chicken off the street with no notice or nothing, to Bobby and Wally on Thanksgiving." And it was in VNC, which is visitors and correspondence. So basically, you're in a room with a lot of guys that are in prison, and they're there with their wives or their girlfriends or their kids, and it's Thanksgiving, and everybody in the room was just like kind of looking over at the. It was a three pack Kentucky Fried Chicken combo with the neon green coleslaw, and they're just looking over like, what, like he's like wagging like a golden retriever looking at something special on Thanksgiving Sunday, and they were laughing their arses off. They hadn't had Kentucky Fried Chicken since 1983. I also do want to say that the fight for their innocence eclipsed the victim in the case, right? The murder of George Leeman, the down and out plumber, right? So there's that. Even his own family doesn't think that the police got it right, and either does the Department of Justice, because they said they got it wrong and compensated them for a lot of money, which is an undisclosed amount. And what's remarkable is that it's been a 40-year fight to prove their innocence, but it's been 20 years on the inside trying to prove it. And then even once they got paroled, then they continued to fight for their innocence. Not a lot of people do that. That's how steadfast they were. That's how true to their innocence they were.